So people were saying that I should watch more of Max Miller, and I agree. And this video of ancient Egyptian spiral bread of the Pharaoh sounds very fitting. Very, very fitting. So yeah, let's get into it.
In ancient Egypt, bread was everything. Not only was it the cornerstone of their diet, but it was also a form of currency and often the way that you would get into the good graces of the gods. That's why they had so many types of bread, like this spiral boiled bread as seen on the tomb of Pharaoh Ramses III. So thank you to Babel for sponsoring this video as we bake the bread of ancient Egypt, this time on Tasting History.
I didn't know bread was that prevalent in Egypt, which is funny because, like, I read a lot about Egypt stuff.
Egyptians had up to 40 different types of
bread,
but
not their food.
I've actually made one of those 40. It was a simple Egyptian flatbread a few years back.
Yeah,
but
this one I knew.
Wanted to make this one, not just because it's spiral and looks cool.
I knew about the flat one.
It was boiled before it was baked.
Eh?
Maybe because we don't know that for sure.
Okay.
Unfortunately, the ancient Egyptians didn't leave us any recipes. Instead, they left us pictures. But because they're just images, often shown out of order, it leaves a lot open to interpretation.
Okay, that's fair,
So the recipe that I'm going to be using today comes from the Valley of the Kings on the walls of the tomb of Pharaoh Ramses III, who reigned in the 20th dynasty from 1186 to 1155 BC. It starts off with an image of two men kneading dough with their feet. Above them we see baskets, presumably where the dough was left to ferment, just as it's still done in parts of Egypt today, and then some men bringing the dough to another who flattens it out and shapes it into some of the many forms that ancient Egyptian breads have been found to have.
Those are very interesting forms that they have.
Everything from discs to the shape of a cow. There were also molds in which bread was baked.
They shaped
some
it like a cow?
Very long cones and others like triangles that I've always thought kind of looked like a Speedo. Then of course there is the spiral bread that we're making today. Other men are shown heating an unknown liquid, and beneath them are baskets of what might be dates or grapes or grain. For the cooking process, we see a man using sticks as if he's ready to place the spiral bread into another heated vat of liquid. Now, many Egyptologists interpret this as boiling, but maybe it's actually a liquid of oil and he's getting ready to fry it. It's really not known. In fact, there was one Egyptologist from the 19th century who thought he was boiling macaroni. But everything else on the wall seems to have something to do with bread, so it's probably bread as well. And since it's boiled, makes me wonder if the texture is not going to be a little bit like a bagel. After boiling it...
I want a bagel so badly now! Why? Why do I do this to myself? Why am I watching this when I clearly crave bread?
Shows a baker putting bread into a deep oven similar to a modern tandoor, and then there is more shaping, more baking, and carrying the finished bread. So would we call that a recipe? No, I don't think that we would, but that's okay, I'm still gonna make it. But it is why I tend to work with recipes that are actually written down in words, because even if they're not in English, at least I can translate them with some help from today's sponsor, Babbel. Babbel is one of the top language learning apps in the world, and it is a great way to learn a new language if you're planning on doing some traveling, or you need to learn a new language for work, or if you just want to get some self-improvement going.
I wonder
the lessons from Babbel are nice and quick, about 10 minutes each, so you can fit them into your schedule very easily.
Because Duolingo is kind of shitty.
They like to focus on words and phrases that you'll find in real-world situations, like wir feiern ein Fest. We're throwing a party. And then, of course, I tend to use this phrase while I'm at any party, ich esse den Kuchen, which is I'm eating the cake. Babbel also offers lessons specifically in pronunciation, as well as podcasts to help get the language into your ear. And to really get going on a new language, Babbel now offers live lessons, and you get 2 free lessons with your subscription, plus a 20-day money-back guarantee. So to give Babbel a try, just click my link in the description or scan this QR code
I might actually give it a try.
60% off of your subscription.
I'm curious how it is.
Now, while Babbel does offer many, many languages, ancient Egyptian pictures is not one of them.
Yeah, hieroglyphs? I don't think hieroglyphs are something that modern apps will teach you. That is for sure. And yeah, Duolingo is really bad. That like I used to use Duolingo, and then I went from hiragana, katakana, and like basic stuff, and it just threw you in the wild west of deep sea and went like, good luck. You don't know how to swim quite yet, but good luck. And that's when I stopped using Duolingo. It was really bad. That's why I'm curious about Babbel.
Turns out so. I'm going to be relying on a lot of work from Egyptologists and archaeologists who really study this and have studied specifically the bread and grain found in different tombs from ancient Egypt. And so we are going to start with the grain, the most important part of any bread. So I'm going to be using 4 cups or 500 grams of barley and emmer. Barley and emmer were the 2 most common grains in Egypt, though they also used kamut and einkorn, but those are the 2 most common. So I'm going to blend them together because they often did blend them. And you can go ahead and grind them yourself. There's actually an inscription from the Old Kingdom tomb of Ti in Saqqara that says, "Grind, grind well, I grind with all my strength."
That's where I got my farming genes from, man. As a loot goblin and avid gamer, I grind well as well. Gotta keep on grinding. It's just pixels nowadays.
The servant sifts the flour, and I bake the loaf myself. And really, you should try to grind flour at least once in your life.
I did. It's fun.
But then you'll appreciate pre-ground flour.
It is a lot of work, but it's fun.
I ground my own when I made the Egyptian bread last time. This time, I found some stone ground flour, so it's coarse and it's going to work just great. Then you'll need 2 teaspoons of salt, a half cup or 125 grams of sourdough starter. You can also use a pack of just dried yeast and some water. That will work just fine. Or if you really want to double down on the authenticity, you can do like the inventor of the Xbox, Seamus Blackley, did, and go scour ancient Egyptian pots for actual yeast. He took yeast out of these old pots and used it to make bread today.
Damn! Talk about dedication, man. That is crazy. Also, this looks absolutely delicious. Can I just say that? Can I just say, like, I don't have freshly baked bread right now, and I can't get it until tomorrow morning because it's freaking too late now. But oh my god.
I'll put some links to
I am
more details
craving
on
the
that.
bread.
I'm not doing that because I can't, but it's really cool to read about. Now, from here on out, the rest of the ingredients take a lot of guesswork because we don't know too much, especially when it comes to this specific loaf. The Egyptians sometimes used water to hydrate their bread, but they would also enrich it with some sort of fat or milk. So I'm actually going to be using 1 1/4 cup or 300 milliliters of warm goat's milk. And the Egyptians often flavored their breads, sometimes with things like coriander or fenugreek or cumin, or made them sweet with things like chopped up dates or figs or honey. I'm going to be using 3 tablespoons of date syrup. So first, whisk the salt into the flour and then add the sourdough starter and the milk and the date syrup and mix. Mix until it comes together to form a shaggy dough, set it in a bowl and cover with a damp towel for 30 minutes. Let it rest for 30 minutes, then take it out of the bowl and knead it for about 10 minutes.
Already.
And when you're working with these kinds of grains rather than just modern wheat, they need a lot of work to build up any gluten. I'm actually going to knead this 3 times. I'm going to knead it, and then I'm going to set it aside for a half an hour and let it rest. Then I'm going to knead it a second time for 10 minutes.
He's letting them
let it rest
in between the kneadings.
And then a third time for another 5 or 10 minutes. And by then it should be a nice smooth dough. At that point, you can set it aside to ferment or rise. And if you're using like instant yeast or active dry yeast, probably an hour or an hour and a half will work. If you're using sourdough, it's going to take longer. Mine took about 4 hours to double in size, but that's what you're looking for the dough to double in size.
I am not okay. That looks too delicious already.
Divide the dough into 4 pieces.
I used to make bread with my dad, like as a hobby thing. My dad got into bread making, and we used to make a lot of bread. So like, this is like giving back my memories, but also like making me extra hungry because like I can I can almost smell the fresh bread in my kitchen. This is like torture, but the finest of tortures. Oh, damn.
And roll them out into long ropes about as wide as your index finger. Then start to coil them around in a tight spiral, keeping it as flat as possible, and then tuck the end in under the dough and pinch it to the dough so it doesn't come apart when we boil them. And then set them on a baking sheet and cover them with a damp cloth and let them rise again for another couple of hours. When they look nice and puffy, they are ready, and you can bring 2 quarts of water to a boil and then add a 1/4 cup of honey. Now, in the image of the Egyptians making this bread, it shows them using some sort of sticks to put these in the liquid. But I think that that's going to take a skill that I just don't have. I honestly can't even figure out how they're doing it. So I'm going to use like a strainer that you'd use for frying, and it's going to work very well.
A strainer sounds about
right. So put
right.
the bread into the water and let it boil for 2 minutes. If you have the skill to flip them, go ahead and flip them. I tried to do that and it kind of messed up the coil, so I ended up just leaving it with the coil on top and just kind of splashing hot water over it for the entire 2 minutes, and it seemed to work just fine.
I'm not dissing the person. But how do you not, how can you not flip it? I've had this exact, it's not really a revelation, confusion. When people say they can't flip eggs, or they're scared to flip eggs, and I'm like, huh? It looks very flippable. It might be very delicate, perhaps. But it's like,
Once they're boiled, lift them out of the water and set them on a wire rack to dry and cool. Once they're cool, you can lift the loaves back onto the baking sheet and put them in the oven at 425 degrees Fahrenheit or 218 Celsius and bake them for about 15 minutes, which should be plenty of time for us to head back to ancient Egypt and learn more about their delicious bread.
Time for history! Man, I really like this channel. It's so good. Sometimes you want to splash the top with water. Yeah, like definitely, like if you can't flip it or if you're scared of flipping it, it's definitely good to make sure that you at least get the water back on top. But it's just weird to me because for me, I always considered flipping rather easy. So it's weird to see that it's not easy and it's just something that I'm just used to because I did it a lot. When I was young, I used to, like, I saw pancakes being flipped on cartoons and I wanted to try it. So I perfected flipping using different tools or just the pan itself. Like, I would flip with the pan. Like, I would toss it in the air. Also, like, I flipped it and then tossed, right? I learned how to do that thing as a kid. So to me, it's just one of those things that I've been able to do for so long that I don't stop to think, shit, you gotta actually practice that. I'm like, huh. It's weird because I was a kid when I learned that, right? So it's not like I realized it takes effort because I was a kid. When you're a kid, you don't realize that, you know, you're learning something that not everyone knows. It just becomes part of your core skill set that you think everyone knows. That's why I'm like sitting here going like, what? You can't flip that? Because it's so fundamental in my core. So yeah, that's what I wanted to clarify. It's not like I'm dissing on him or flexing or anything. It's just something I learned very early on.
Bread in ancient Egypt cannot be overstated. In many ways, it is why ancient Egypt even existed as a civilization. The fertile fields along the Nile where grain was harvested allowed for the large population that was able to build a civilization that lasted for 3,000 years. A proverb from the New Kingdom said, "Do not let the granary be lacking in barley or emmer, for it is upon the granary that a house stands firm."
Very
a house
true.
in this case could refer to all of Egypt, because bread was absolutely everything. Bread and beer, which is just a drinkable form of bread, especially back then because it was actually made with bread. But not only did
I never stopped to think of beer as drinkable bread. He's blowing my mind. He's blowing my mind. I'm crew of mead, I guess. That's so cool. That's really badass. Oh, but yeah, I was really interested in Egypt, as you can tell by my model, right? I was really interested in Egypt and their culture and everything. But back then, I was not really a foodie or that interested in food. So I never knew that they were huge on bread, despite knowing, right, that about the Nile, about all their ability to have like a farming ecosystem, like a really good one, that they had a good fertile soil, right? And I'm just like, wow. My mind is being blown so many times in this video for different reasons. I like
Everybody
it.
eat it, but people were paid in it. The people that built the pyramids were largely paid in bread and beer. The average
the good
worker
times.
was paid in bread and beer. Soldiers were paid in bread and beer, and quite handsomely, I might add. The Middle Kingdom pharaoh Mentuhotep III boasted of how well he fed his army. I advanced with an army of 3,000. The battle arena extended to the river and desert. I gave every man a skin of hide and a long stick to carry things, as well as 2 buckets of water and 20 loaves of bread for each day's ration. I guess they got water instead of beer, but they got a lot more bread, so it makes up for it.
That's a lot of
Especially if
bread.
they're carrying around all of that bread. There was a lot of bread. Sometimes you'd receive a bit of food in addition to bread, like some laborers during the Old Kingdom who, in addition to 4 pounds of bread, also received 2 bundles of unnamed vegetables and an unspecified quantity of roast meat. And I'm guessing whatever food you got and how much of it kind of depended on who your boss was. Was it just some guy in middle management, or was it the pharaoh himself? Because Ramses II, in addition to bread, hired 20 fishermen to supply fish to 40 workers and administrators who were building a tomb in the Valley of the Kings. Though my question is,
paid in beer, huh? That gives
paid...
the phrase drinking your paycheck away a new meaning.
Drinking your paycheck. God damn it. Oh, this is so fascinating. Also, like, sounds like a really nice, chill life, man. Hard life, right? Like actual hard labor and work. But you just got paid in beer and bread and fish and like simple life, I guess, would be a better way of putting it. Oh.
With fish from fishermen that he hired, what were the fishermen getting paid? Yeah, answer me that. That one's going to keep me up at night. Now, while Ramses II seemed to pay his workers very well...
I mean, let's be real, they probably also had fish. A portion of the fish was for them, right? That's what I would assume.
Ramses III, not so much. He had some troubles making sure that payment came in on time. He's the one that actually is the tomb where our bread recipe comes from today. While they were building either his tomb or another tomb during his reign, the workers were supposed to be paid every month on the 28th day. Their bread and beer should show up. 6 months in a row, no bread and beer on the 28th day of the month, so
for
they
6
stopped
months?
working. They dropped their tools and said, we're not doing this anymore. It is because of hunger and because of thirst that we come here. There is no clothing, no ointment, no fish, no vegetables. Send to Pharaoh our good lord about it, and send to the vizier our superior, that sustenance may be made for us.
Damn.
Making sure people had their bread, really food in general, was incredibly important, especially to the stability of the kingdom. It was the way that the pharaoh kept being pharaoh. When Akhenaten, the pharaoh that toyed around with monotheism, experienced any strife amongst his officials, which was rather often, he would throw them a banquet, making sure that they had more food than they could eat, and it seems that this ensured their loyalty. And just for future reference,
Yeah,
that is
it showed
also how you
opulence.
ensure my loyalty. More food than I can eat. Unfortunately,
as an extra reference, that also buys my loyalty. just gonna put that out there.
there were times in Egypt's history where even if the pharaoh wanted to give people their bread, their food, it just wasn't in the cards. There wasn't enough to go around, and when that happened, it was not good. It actually is one of the main things that led to the fall of the Old Kingdom. As I said, predictable flooding of the Nile kept the food coming in. And around 2150 BC, that predictability went away, and there were several years where there just was not enough flooding, and so there was not enough food, and already the government was teetering because of other issues. Let's just put it over the edge. Lo, the desert claims the land, towns are ravaged, Upper Egypt became a wasteland. Lo, everyone's hair has fallen out. Lo, great and small say, I wish I were dead. Lo, children of nobles are dashed against walls. Infants are put on high ground.
What the fudge? Dashed against the walls. You know, for like a sad poem of sorts. This is rather vicious.
Ground, food is lacking. Wearers of fine linen are beaten with sticks. Ladies suffer like maidservants. Lo, those who are entombed are cast on high grounds. Men stir up strife unopposed. Groaning is throughout the land, mingled with laments. See now, the land is deprived of kingship. What the pyramid hid is empty. The people are diminished. According to one ruler in Upper Egypt, which is actually in the south, he said that it wasn't until he started to bring their grain to Lower Egypt, or the northern part of Egypt, that things started to become a little more stable. So the moral of the story is make sure people are fed. And that doesn't just go for the entirety of Egypt as a whole, but also on a smaller scale. For domestic tranquility, you need to make sure everybody's got enough bread. The maxims of the...
I mean, that still pretty much kind of continues to this day. It's just that instead of bread, it's money. It's like, if your people are not paid, well, you have a problem.
Vizier Tahotep during the 5th dynasty instructs, if you are wealthy and set up a household, be gracious to your wife according to what is fair. Feed and clothe her well. Make her happy all the days of your life. Because if you don't feed your wife, someone else will have to do it for you.
What the fuck? Bruh. Oh my!
There is a collection of papyri from Der el Medina. This was the village that housed all of the workers who built the tombs in the Valley of the Kings. And they tell us so much about daily life of kind of your average person at this period in time. There's one note from a worker whose co-worker, Ruti, has kicked his wife out of the house and stopped feeding her. His wife spent 40 days dwelling with me in my house, and I provided for her, giving her 1 sack of emmer and 10 loaves. And I assumed that it was her duty to grind that sack of emmer into flour, because it was very often the woman's job to do that. It took a lot of work to do, but if you had a sister, you could often pawn that work off onto her. From Takenti Shepsa to her sister, Ie, I shall send you barley, and you shall have it ground for me, and add emmer to it. And you shall make me bread with it, for I have been quarreling with Merimat, my husband.
Excuse you? Excuse you? That's so crazy, man. If you had a younger sister, you'd be like, yo, you do the work. I'm busy fighting with my husband.
I will divorce you,
Jesus
he keeps
Christ.
saying when he quarrels with me, on account of my mother, questioning the amount of barley required for bread. Now your mother does nothing for you, he keeps telling me, and says, although you have brothers and sisters, they don't take care of you, he keeps telling me, in arguing with me daily.
So I will prove my husband wrong by having you do the work for me. This is really cool.
I love that these exist.
I
So
love
much of
that
ancient
too.
Egyptian history is, found on like the walls of tombs of great pharaohs and viziers, and it's the events of big wars and politics and everything, and that's all really, really cool. But I am living for the hot goss in this little workers' village in the Valley of the Kings.
Honestly, yeah, same. Like, this is absolutely precious. I like this a lot more because it's like just the common folk having their own little issues there and living in their life, and you just look at it from the outside and go like, damn.
Love it. Though there is some quality stuff in some of the more formal writings of the time, like the instructions of Ani, which were basically written from a father to a son, kind of telling him how to live life. And one of them starts off very sagely.
One of them starts sagely. Son, be glad you are not born in 2024.
Give back in abundance the bread your mother gave you. Support her as she supported you.
Aww. Man, they really had bread integrated and everything, huh? That's insane.
But then it goes on to basically become an ancient Egyptian guilt trip. Your mother had many burdens in you. You were born late, but she harnessed herself, still, her breast in your mouth for 3 years while you flourished.
This reminds me of my mother. Whenever she'd be upset with me, she'd be like, do you know the hardships I had to go through to raise you? You would, every time you would hit your knee, you would faint and send me into a horror trip wondering if you're still breathing. Yes.
Your excrement, disgusting.
People never
but
change.
She was not disgusted.
Okay, my parents never brought up my poop at least. I'll take that.
Saying, what shall I do? She sent you to school when you were taught to write, and she waited for you daily with bread and beer in her house. You take care of your mother in her old age. I love these little parables, I guess. Anyway, there are a lot of these wise sayings that
I can't, man. This is pretty savage, but it's also accurate, right? It's like it's something that's still instilled in a lot of places. Like, your family takes care of you, and then you take care of your family when they are old. And it's not something necessarily that's like, it's something that's instilled in a lot of places, and sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, depending on your family, right? But it is still the same today, which is fascinating. At least here, where I grew up. Like, that's kind of how you are taught. That's kind of how you go around, right? Like, I know, like, not every place has this belief system. However, like, some people look at me very odd when I'm like, I do anything for my family.
Have to do with bread, and some are even geared toward the Pharaoh himself. Like King Merikare was instructed that when people come to you to pay homage, you can't expect them to be as wealthy as you are. If one has no grain to give, be gracious, since they are humble before you, and be content with your own loaves of bread and beer.
Whoa. Be content with your own loaves? Damn. I feel like they were onto something, but this kind of got lost in translation with influencers and being chronically online for people. Imagine not looking at your neighbors and saying the grass is greener.
Granite comes to you unhindered, so do not destroy the monuments of another. Do not eat bread without giving some to those near you who do not have anything to eat, since the bread is eternal, while man does not last.
The bread cult was real. Bread is eternal. I like this, though.
Be content if you are satisfied with 3 loaves of bread and 2 cups of beer. If your stomach still feels hunger, resist it. Now, those are all about treating your fellow man.
Being charitable, taking things in moderation, not being jealous, being content with your life. Damn, son. Very fascinating how they framed their morals or like their lessons.
Well, and making sure that everyone is well fed. People. But it also applied to the gods. Enter the temple, eat bread in the house of the god, replenish the offerings, multiply the sacrificial loaves, increase the daily offerings. It profits him who does so. It was essential to offer bread to the gods, especially during festivals. There was one festival during the reign of Ramses III to the god Amun-Ra, where it said that Ramses gave 2.8 million loaves of bread to the god. Of course, that bread was also for the people who were in the villages around the temple.
Can you even imagine 2.8 million loaves? Like, just trying to envision it. You make an entire pyramid out of that. Like, I have to think that those loaves were tiny, right? Like one of those small buns, maybe. Yeah, the fine loaf, exactly. It's like, can you even imagine that? That's an astronomical amount of bread.
You know, the food would go to the god, sit on the altar. Once the god had had enough, then the priests would take the food and give it to the people and keep some for themselves. As one text from the Temple of Edfu explains, one lives on the provision of the gods, but this is always food which leaves the altar after the god is satisfied. My question is, how'd they know when the god was satisfied? I'm guessing nobody said, I'm done eating, right?
Probably 3 days, right? Like give it 3 days and then you can take whatever's left or whatever's not moldy. I don't know.
I guess the priest just kind of played that by ear. Either way, my bread is about to be done and I am not going to offer it to Amun-Ra. I'm just going to go ahead and eat it right now. So once the bread is fully baked, remove it from the oven,
that looks so
set it on a wire
nice.
rack to cool before eating, and here we are. The boiled spiral bread of Ramses III.
It looks really nice.
They turned out really, really well. I kind of thought while I was boiling them that they would completely disintegrate, but they didn't. They look a lot like, I'm going to say cinnamon rolls or cow patties, but I'm going to say cinnamon rolls.
They look really nice.
It smells so good. It must be the honey from the water. It does have a little honeyness on the outside. Let's open it up here. So it's very dense, which I knew it would be. Just with this grain, it's just what's going to happen.
It's not going to be fluffy, it's going to be dense, yeah.
It's not dry, it feels nice and moist. Let's give it a shot.
Now I want bread.
Quite nice. There was a hint of sweetness to it because of that, the date syrup. I think it's
activated. Hashtag hungry.
Hashtag hungry. I agree. Date syrup, like I never tried date syrup in bread. I tried different syrups and different stuff, but not date syrup. And I'm like, I feel like I'm missing out.
Used a little bit more. If you make it, add a little bit more. These grains, while they're really dense, while they are heavy and are hard to work with, they actually provide more flavor than like all-purpose flour.
Of course.
It's a really flavorful bread. And then, you add a little bit of the date syrup and that just kind of adds another layer. But I think if you added fruit, or I think with this, it would probably be better with...
fruit would be really nice with it.
Cumin, something like that. It would just complement the flavors better, but really, really nice. The texture is dense. It's kind of chewy. It is kind of like a bagel. The outside is smooth like a bagel, so there is that.
I don't think like it's really like a bagel
entirely.
Looking at how it is on the inside.
It has some of the same characteristics. So this bread obviously was made here in my house, but it seems that...
But I guess an ancient version of a bagel, like just putting some glaze on it or just like dipping it in something could also be some...
The best bread of ancient Egypt was made in Thebes. The bread which is in it is more tasty than cakes made of goose fat. Its water is sweeter than honey. One drinks of it to drunkenness. Behold, this is how one lives in Thebes. I don't know that they're better than cakes made of goose fat, because I've never tried that, but maybe I'll try to figure out what they meant by that. And so,
Cake
yeah, this
made
with
out
some
of
water
goose fat.
that I guess is very sweet. Mighty fine. And I'll see you next time.
I presume they mean like a cake? But yeah, now I'm hungry. This video was very, very enjoyable. I like the channel a lot. I love the drip of history, of information, the little gossip that we got from the farmers. I love the whole having my mind blown by all the different aspects in the video. It was like such a nice ride and such a nice joy. So yeah. I'm happy. I'm happy to know this channel.